a show that's by Floyd, Bayne, and Kirby Harris. I'm Kirby Harris, and I just wanted to give a review of Trump's State of the Union address, some good and some bad. All right, so here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if you agree with this critique or not, and you can say so down in the comments if you do or don't. You can give your own views. Go ahead and talk to each other, tell each other why you're right or wrong down in the comments. Also, you can subscribe to our channel so we can, get lots of viewers and hopefully create a great show and a great community. All right, here's it. It's wonderful that the economy is growing. Oh, hold on. Let me back up a little bit. This guy, Perry Willis, who started downsizedc.org, I read what he wrote, and I figured it's better than anything that I could possibly say. So, basically, here goes. Here's what he says. It's wonderful that the economy is growing, yet it's hard to tell when politicians help or hurt that process. So let's focus on some details. The tax cuts are good, but their impact will be blunted as you borrow more money to fund all the bloated spending you proposed in this speech. The spending competes with the market sector for resources. Stop it. Cut spending to balance the budget. Now, I'm going to pause real quick right there. I want to say that from what I've noticed, basically the tax cuts, some are better than none, but they're temporary. He and others actually said they were going to reform the tax code. They have not done that in any way, shape, or form. These tax cuts mostly go to business. I'm not anti-business. I'm for the real free market, not the government manipulated free market. But I will tell you this, basically what I would say is, excuse me, you needed to make them permanent. You need to focus on the individuals, because the individuals are the people. The businesses are good too, but you should really focus on the people. I won't even go into the whole getting rid of taxes on your labor, because you're trading labor for a medium money, US dollars, to be able to buy stuff. So you're basically trading something of yours for something else. So the point being is they shouldn't tax that. Most law dictionaries define income as, basically, I said I wouldn't get into it, but here I am. Define income as basically profit. Well, when you're trading your labor for money, that is not profit. Anyway, so it doesn't apply under the amendment to the Constitution for income taxes. Let's see. Let's see, what did he say next? Let's see, oh yeah, the tax cuts are good, but their impact will be blunted as you borrow more money to fund all the bloated spending you proposed in the speech. The spending competes with the market sector for resources. Stop it. Cut spending to balance the budget. It's good that you want to appoint judges who will obey the Constitution, including the Second Amendment, but your own actions also obey the Constitution, which a lot of stuff in this speech is not constitutional. A lot of the stuff he supports and backs and has said over time is not constitutional, and some of it's just not moral, like he's for torture. But anyway, let's see. Your deregulation efforts are outstanding, including your moves to deregulate energy production. The Constitution grants no authority for such regulations, so do more of this. On a related note, increased FDA drug approvals are good, and your Let Them Try initiative for terminal patients is a very positive step. In other words, let them try drugs that could be dangerous for them. They're going to die anyway. But the FDA itself is unconstitutional, so go further. Support legislation to make the FDA advisory, rather than mandatory. Remove tax funding at the same time. Pharmaceutical companies that want the FDA seal of approval should pay for it. Your promise to lower drug prices is welcome and exciting, but not if it involves federal agencies dictating or manipulating what those prices should be. Instead, in addition to making the FDA advisory rather than mandatory, reform the patent process, which raises prices. In other words, the patent process raises prices and creates pharmaceutical cartels and drug monopolies. We don't want that. So reform the patent process, the prices won't raise. Pharmaceutical cartels and drug monopolies, therefore, will not have power and would cease to exist. So I added the part at the end because when I was reading it, it wasn't really clear, at least to me, what he was saying there. This is an excellent article, though. Your talk about fair trade sounds good, but your protectionist trade policies help the privileged few while raising the cost of the living for everyone else. You have no constitutional authority to manipulate the prices Americans pay to buy foreign products. And that's the whole thing. Not just that, but when you force companies to bring their jobs back through manipulation, especially if it's better for them and better for the consumer and better to keep the low prices, to keep the manufacturing over there and create new jobs here of the 21st century, not the manufacturing, which is considered 20th century, even though it continues on. There are new types of jobs that we can get here, not bringing back the old ones. And like I said, you bring it back, the prices are going to rise. So you got to decide, people, what you want. You want higher prices, or you want the manual labor jobs, or you want new and better jobs. So anyway, let's see. He goes on to say, skip the infrastructure spending. Transportation bills are notorious for being stuffed with unrelated pork-filled payoffs to special interests. Your priority should be reduced spending and a balanced budget. He also says your promises about job training and paid family leave both violate the Constitution. Job training schemes are nothing new. Historically, they've undermined voluntary market sector initiatives which do a much better job. Private sector always does a much better job because they have something to risk. The government has nothing to risk. They can just raise your taxes and get more money and more money. Anyway, he goes on to say family leave reverses the course you've set on business regulation. Besides, there is no enumerated constitutional power to do either thing. He goes on to say your proposal to rehabilitate criminals also sounds promising, but there is no federal authority for most things that are now federal crimes. If you really want to reduce the number of criminals, then obey the Constitution yourself, I added the yourself, by ending drug prohibition. In fact, this will also do more to solve any border crime problem than your immigration controls ever will. He goes on to say, with regard to immigration, there is no enumerated constitutional power for the federal government to limit immigration in any way. The Constitution only provides power over naturalization. Your immigration proposals break the supreme law of the land. Stop it. Yeah, I used to think that myself, that basically the federal government had control over immigration. It really doesn't, just naturalization. I thought it for years. It's funny how we get ideas in our heads. We're told stuff, we just believe it, we're told over and over, and then we go look it up ourselves, read the Constitution, and we see that's not the case at all. Excuse me. So let me go ahead and say your proposals for increased defense spending are likewise wrong. We already spend more than most of the rest of the world combined. Even worse, these military forces are used in ways that create more enemies than they destroy. Stop the madness. You had the right idea during your campaign when you talked about the need for less foreign intervention. Do that. It will save money, help balance the budget, and make us safer too. Yeah, I agree with that. See, that's the problem. For the last 100 years, we have meddled in other countries' businesses. And when you meddle in someone else's business, that really ticks them off. I mean, they're like, dude, get out of my business. Now, I will say that a lot of these Muslim countries have radical Muslim leadership, or at least radical Muslim laws, whether you agree they're really Muslim laws or not, and whether they're really in I'm not going there. But what I will say is that they have these laws, and basically, but anyway, you know, so yes, the violent radical Muslims and radical Muslim nations, they are violent. But the thing is, what a lot of people don't understand, and yes, a lot of them have and the radical groups have a view to take over the world. So basically, yes, eventually they would have come for us, for lack of a better word, or tried to attack us, but we brought a lot of it on ourselves. It's kind of like if you have a gang in a rival city, and you're like, well, I don't want them spreading over here. So even when they're not in your area and they're not even focusing on you, they're just focused on that. So you start shouting at them and going over there, and even though it's that town's business to stop it, you go over there with your military and you stop it, or you fiddle on that town's whatever and try to get their laws changed and blah, 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 blah. It's not a perfect example, but it's the example of someone's not bothering you, and then you go make a big deal about what they're doing to someone else, or not even that, you're just manipulating to benefit yourself at the expense of that nation. So you could even say it like that. I mean, say it's England. If we went over there and manipulated them in all sorts of ways, eventually they'd get pissed. A perfect example is when England would do this around the country with different people, especially like the Scottish. You know, they'd sit there and they did whatever they did to manipulate the Scottish nation to the point where you had the Jacobites and the rebellions and all that kind of stuff. So it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Don't let anybody tell you it's not. Well, anyway, let me go ahead and finish up. And he also says, and please, please, please drop the sanctions idea. Economic sanctions have a terrible track record. Increased cultural engagement is the path to follow because our culture is our greatest and most attractive asset. Exactly. I mean, you know, our culture has bad points. It has good points. The good points we need to promote. Not necessarily the government promote, but we the people promote. The government needs to say, hey, look how our people are, look how our business is, you know, look how we do things. When we do things right, when we don't manipulate our people, when we don't manipulate other countries, stop doing all that and just be the best you can be, and then let, you know, people are attracted to that. Other nations are attracted to that. So anyway, let me move on, wrap this up. In short, you're doing some good things, but you could do far better. Adhere closely to the Constitution to perfect your performance. Amen. Like I said, that was a review of Trump's State of the Union speech by Perry Willis of downsizedc.org. If you like this video, subscribe below. Give us some thumbs up. If you don't agree with anything I've said, say so in the comments. If you don't agree with the people saying things in the comments, comment on their comments, argue with each other, disagree. Please be civil. But I wanted to tell you, we're working on a studio here. So hopefully that will come. It's a slow process. Getting the funds, getting the time. Probably see the pink walls in the back. This was my daughter's room, who moved into a kind of cool room with gray walls and not into the pink and the purple anymore. But anyway, that's kind of funny. But so we're working on that. But like I said, check out downsizedc.org. They got a lot of great stuff there. I want to add one more thing before I go. Things he didn't mention that I will mention. There are ideas that Trump has that I think are bad for the economy. He kind of said that. But there's also things that I think are bad for our society, bad for our liberty. Stuff like I said, Trump being pro-torture. And you might say, well, what's wrong with torture of the bad guys? One, I don't think that's who we should be. Two, even if you agree torture is good for the bad guys, the policy sets it up so you don't have to be a bad guy. They just have to say you're a bad guy. And they can hold you indefinitely with no lawyer, no court date, all that in the Patriot Act. So he supports that. He supports NSA spying, basically. Yeah, I mean, I know see, that's the thing. People say he's not a politician, but Trump has said things out of both sides of his mouth, just like a politician. So, like I said, I don't believe he's this great libertarian savior. There's some libertarians saying he's a secret libertarian. I don't believe he's a limited government. I won't use the word conservative because I think that word has really lost its meaning. Libertarian has really too. But anyway, very limited government type of person. He is not a constitutionalist. He's just feeding scraps to the base, and people are eating it up. People have fallen for the biggest long con in history. Disagree with me? Say it down there. Like what I say, subscribe, thumbs up, and like I said, check out downsizedc.org and check out Perry Willis. You could search him. His stuff is out there on various websites. All right, man. Have a great day, and God bless.